Okay, so now it's time. We've got the two side by side. We're just going to start moving stuff over. We'll just go systematically here from the old to the new. Okay, so these are your variable cam timing solenoids. They go here and here for your intake and your exhaust. Just switching these over from the old motor to the new. You want to make sure this thing is in good shape, it's undamaged. And check out your seal. Put a little bit of oil around the seal, and then it's a bit of an interference fit because of that seal, of course. And then the bolts had a medium strength Loctite on them. So I'm gonna put a little bit of blue Loctite on those, and then we'll torque them to 62 inch-pounds. Okay, so we've run those up to where they touch. Now we'll crisscross here. And we'll do the same with the exhaust. Looks pretty decent as well. Seal looks pretty good. If you're not sure what these do, they actually change the relative position of the camshaft to some degree. There's some adjustment in there. And that allows the engine, when you're cruising, to get really good fuel mileage, or if you're climbing a hill or you're accelerating to get on the freeway or something like that, then it gives you more performance. Okay, that pretty much looks like it for the immediate front of the motor. So I didn't install the alternator and the tensioner and stuff. I'm gonna just give myself a little more room with doing the exhaust. So I think that's what we'll work on next. Go ahead and pull this only two. Guys, if you don't have a set of these things are pretty cool. They get into tight spots and then you just squeeze, and of course they take care of the clamp for you, but they are very handy in certain situations. Of course, with the O-rings, it's a little stuck. Again, everything you're doing here is working, not everything, but a lot of this is working with plastic, so go real easy. Sheesh. Let's see. Well, so we'll wait on this. So this car has two thermostats. This one is the one we just took out of the block there. And then, and of course, it'll go here. But then this assembly, which we'll get to when we work on the back of the engine, is also a thermostat. So this is the block thermostat, as they call it. When you're transferring this thing over, one thing to make sure is, of course, check the condition of this O-ring, but also this O-ring likes to stay stuck in the block, so make sure you get that one transferred over as well. And I'm also going to put just a dab of blue Loctite on these. And then we're going to torque them to 89 inch-pounds. Okay, so now I think we'll work on getting these turbo oil lines off the block using a torch bit. So now to get this turbo off, we took this heat shield bolt off here, which I believe should be the only heat shield bolt holding. And at this point, it looks like everything is clear. All this stuff is clear of the turbo. And we'll go ahead, we'll get these 4 nuts off, and then that turbo should come off in our hand. Okay. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty clean. Actuator's smooth. So, just going to set this aside for a second, and then we'll get everything all together to install it on the new motor. Alright, ran into a little hiccup here. My gasket kit that I ordered, I figured would have the gasket for the exhaust manifold bolting to the head. It actually doesn't. It has several other things. So if you go to do this job, guys, if you go to do this job and you do like I did and you think you're doing everything ahead of time, ordering a gasket set and making sure you're all ready, what Ford considers a gasket set for this Focus vehicle, well, I'll just show you. You get a rear main seal. You get a, might be hard to see here, oil block off. I'm assuming that's the front seal, and then that, the other one behind there, this guy, we will probably use because that is part of the water neck on the back of the motor. And then the other thing they give us is, so they give us a brand new oil drain plug and some other little small reusable gaskets. So like I said, probably the only thing out of that whole thing we're going to use might be this water neck gasket, even though those style of gaskets are reusable. And when I say reusable, even the factory procedure says those are reusable. So more than likely that kit's going to go back for a refund, because when we got our long block here, it already has on the back side, it's got an oil drain plug, it's got the front main seal, it's got a crankshaft pulley on it and all that. So you know, obviously if we were going to be rebuilding the old motor, that would have been probably good stuff to have. But but it was not helpful in this situation. So those parts will be in tomorrow at the dealership, about an hour away. We're gonna press on here with some other things. These studs need to be removed, and we'll clean the Loctite off the threads, and we'll move them over to the other motor. So these are I call them a reverse Torx. People call them a star or whatever else. But you can see that right there. This is a E7 is the size, and then so here's the whole set, and you can pretty much get these anywhere. Even Harbor Freight has a set of those. You know, take your own chances with that, but they're pretty available now. So, but you know, that lets you get in there and get a hold of those suckers and get them right off of there. So another thing I want to share with you guys is so these are the nuts that go on these studs to hold that turbo on. Like some of the others we talked about with the torque converter, these are a crimped nut. So the all data procedure, the factory, which is the factory procedure, tells us to remove and discard those nuts. Well, so really the only place I can find that has those nuts is Ford themselves, and so I called Ford, and they've got a great guy, works in the parts department. Scott there is a very knowledgeable mechanic guy, knows a lot. He looks in there and he says, well, it says as required. Well, normally when you have something that says as required, that's only if you have difficulty, the nut rounds off or something like that. So a little bit of difference there as far as, you know, the procedure, actually the maintenance procedure saying you have to replace them, and the parts man's book that says, well, if they need them. It does say the same thing for the studs. The procedure does actually say for these studs as required, and the parts man did ask me if I needed them, and I said no, these are perfectly good. So matter of fact, the crimp on these lock nuts, now I'm not really sure that those would actually come apart. You know, back off, loosen up is what I mean when I say that, because they still have they get to a point where I can't turn it by hand, so the run-on torque is nice. Back when I worked in aviation, they would actually have a run-on torque specification, and you'd use a dial torque wrench, and as long as it had a certain amount of run-on torque drag, if you will, then that nut was still serviceable. But you know, this being a customer's car, we're not going to reuse these, and so we'll go ahead and wait for those to come in tomorrow. But that doesn't mean that we can't go ahead and press on with some things here. So I'm going to get set up to work on the back of the motors, and I'll bring you guys back in. Alright, so we're set up here on the back of the motors, and we'll start getting this stuff crossed over. Of course, the flex plate, we'll be able to take the flex plate off, but as you can see, we'll do that. The last thing we do when we hook it up to the cherry picker and we get ready to put it in the car is we'll take it off the stand, throw the flex plate on there, and then we'll go. So that'll be good. All right. I'm going to go ahead and take our high pressure fuel line off of here. And I'm just going to set it on top of this motor for now. We'll get to the top here shortly, but we've got to move our coil packs over, and of course we'll do the fuel rail spark plug. We'll take a look at the spark plugs. We may get a set of those tomorrow when we run and get the gasket for the exhaust manifold. Okay. It'll be a little bit of a challenge because we got to work around our lift chain, but that'll be just fine. Sorry about the fans, guys. It's starting to get warm here again, so it's going to have a little bit of fan noise. All right. Probably easiest just to pull this off, take this stay off, and then we can take that whole line assembly out of our way. There we go. And we got our one more harness stay. Something like that. Alright, and this side off looks like an 8mm. Those are Loctited as well, and they come out as studs. They actually don't have the nuts on them. So we'll clean those up in a minute. We've got one more down here. Okay. That looks really good. All right. When you go to move this over to the new motor, you want to make sure that you're clocked properly to the exhaust cam. So this one looks like it is, so that's great. We'll put a little bit of blue Loctite on there. All right, so vacuum pump, that vacuum pump torque is 89 inch-pounds, which is a common torque value for these 6mm 1.0 bolts. But you always want to double check the procedure. All right. Now, you can set this solenoid back on there. And those are locking nuts, and they're going onto plastic, so they don't need a whole lot. It's good to go. And we can hook the line back up. Start putting our stays back. But I might actually leave that loose right now because that'll give us the space we need for doing the intake manifold. So now we'll go ahead and pull, dropping things. We'll go ahead and pull this thermostat housing off. We've got this line, we'll take that loose. Make sure you guys can see the coolant line headed down to the oil cooler. So I've already got the clamp off of it. We'll go ahead and pull this thermostat housing off. We've got this line, we'll take that loose. I'm sure you guys can see the coolant line headed down to the oil cooler. So I've already got the clamp off of it. Okay. Now with that loose, then the only thing we should have left to do here is to get, looks like there's 4 bolts here. We'll get those out. Right in the bucket of coolant. Perfect. Okay, and this is that reusable gasket I was telling you guys about. These are actually factory spec, acceptable, reusable gaskets. Normally they don't stick like that. These are used on a lot of things. Valve covers, stuff like that. Things that you might, intake manifold. I'm not sure on this little motor, we'll figure that out here shortly, but a lot of times on front wheel drive cars that are V6s, or even 4 cylinders, depending on how the engine is installed, you may have to remove the intake to change the spark plugs out, and they use that reusable gasket so you can just take the intake manifold off. It goes, just clean up the gasket surface and it goes right back on. So, but you can see it goes into a groove there, which we've got cleaned up all nice. Sits back down in there. And then it's good to go, ready to go on the new motor. Alright, so we're ready to put this thermostat housing on the new motor. We've got our gasket all set up, back in place. These did not have Loctite on them and did not call for it. Okay, these have a spec of 89 inch-pounds as well. And now I'm going to leave this line off right now and let it hang down, because next we'll get ready to move the intake manifold over. Actually, before we move the intake manifold over, we're going to go ahead and pull the flex plate off here. Which I will go ahead and double check the procedure and make sure that these are not one-time use as well. I know on the older Focus models, like the mid-2000s, they are a one-time use. So we may have to get some of those as well. Okay. Looks like this is an internally balanced engine. You can tell that because this flex plate has no balance weights on it. So, which also interestingly, there's no alignment dowel, which you would think there would be. But anyways, so we'll set this aside and have it ready for when we take that engine off the stand. Okay, now we're going to work on getting the intake manifold off of the old motor. Okay, and like we talked about, it does have the reusable gaskets. Procedure says replace as necessary, and these look pretty darn good. Of course, we'll wipe the oil up a little bit, but they look pretty darn good. Okay, so we're all ready to put this intake manifold back on. You want to take a rag with just a touch of brake clean and just make sure this is all clean. Pretty clean. And I've already cleaned the manifold side. And what I'm doing is holding this thing out away from the head right now so that I don't wiggle it around and pull those gaskets out of their little groove they're in. And we'll get all of these just started. And now what we'll do is we'll just push it straight in, and then following the procedure, it says run these in hand tight only, and then we have a torque sequence we have to follow. These are 89 inch-pounds as well. So we start with this one. And I'm actually going to do this in steps. So I'm going to drop down to 45. That way we just pull everything up nice and even. Now I'll bump up to 89 and we'll run through that same sequence one more time. I just feel that pulls it up a little bit better. You know, you go full torque with this plastic manifold on one bolt and all the others are just loose. It's just a little bit better to do it this way. Okay. Now we should be able to go ahead and put our oil cooler hose on, and we can actually press these little stays up on those studs. These may not work for this clamp. These are more for a standard style of spring clamp. I may have to use the other ones that I showed you guys earlier. Oh, we got it. Okay. So now we've got a little bracket here. This is actually the bracket that holds the oxygen sensor connectors. Part of the harness. So this guy right here. So now I'm going to get set up to do the top, and we'll get that done. So now we're set up, we'll start working on the top. We have taken and just roughly laid out the vacuum tubing here. You can see it's not popped down into anything in case I need to move that. We got this intake tube hooked up, but we'll get to this. So right now what I want to do is I'm going to work on this harness, which looks like we probably need to go ahead and get our coil packs out of our way first. Of course, when you get these things out, you want to go ahead and inspect that boot, make sure there's no cracks or anything like that. So these look pretty good. Okay, so I'm just going to lay these out on the table. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pop these harness stays loose. These things can be a pain in the neck. They're a metal jaw that grabs into the plastic, so they don't want to let go. Looking down inside there, we should be able to reach down in there with a pair of needle nose and get the connectors loose. fortunately this is your fuel injection harness, and fortunately there's no locks on these connectors, so it comes out pretty easy. So we'll just set this aside for right now, and we should be able to pull the fuel rail out of there. I don't like using an impact to break loose bolts, especially tight ones that use a Torx, because I have had some bad luck in the past where I've damaged the bolt, damaged the Torx bit. And I get it, you know, when you're doing like seat belts in a car or something like that, you're definitely going to use an impact, but those are T55, T60s. This is a T40. Anything about that size and lower, I would probably just break them by hand, and then you can spin them out with the impact. Stucco rings, we'll keep working it and it'll come out. Prying against the valve cover lightly. It's plastic, so go easy. Okay. Well, one of our fuel injectors stayed down inside the head, so that's okay. We can pull that guy out. So this is what direct injection injectors get to looking like, guys. They get pretty bad. So kind of see there, they get carboned up. So we'll look up procedure we can do to clean those up, because we want to make sure we don't use a chemical or something that could possibly cause damage. We'll go ahead and pull the spark plugs. Okay, looks like those plugs are a 14 millimeter or a 9/16. Well, good thing we're putting new ones in it, because that one just got dropped. And if you ever accidentally drop a spark plug, you need to replace it, because you don't know if you put a hairline fracture in the ceramic, and could cause you misfire issues and other problems that you don't want to be chasing. So yep, if you do like I just did and you accidentally drop a spark plug, go get a new one. I'm going to show you these plugs, guys. They don't look too bad. All that wetness, of course, is our PV blaster we sprayed down in there. So, but like I said, we're going to replace them. Our new motor already has the intake and exhaust cam position sensors in it, so we don't have to switch those over. Oil cap. We've got our breather cover, that's already good. So that looks like all we've got to switch over from the top of the motor. Looking at the rest of this side, we've got to move we've got to move over our knock sensor. Sometimes orientation matters with these guys, not only just for the harness, but for detection. So again, we're going to take a little bit of brake cleaner, we'll clean the surface, and then we'll make sure we clean where it's going to sit. So this is what we're talking about. So okay, so I'm going to go off camera here, and I'm going to work on getting that #1 fuel injector out, and then I'll bring you guys back in when I go to reinstall that stuff. Okay guys, so just got that #1 fuel injector out, and I want to show you how I did that. I have this screwdriver that I had bent this previously for other things, but so this injector sits down in there like so. I took this screwdriver and I went down and I just carefully went underneath this connector. Now I can't stress enough to you how gentle you've got to be when you're doing this, because again, you're dealing with this plastic, right? So I took a pair of needle nose, and let's do the best way to show you this. Came over the top and just gently grabbed right next to that connector, okay, as that thing's sitting in there. Did that, backed it up with coming in with the screwdriver underneath and just lifting slightly, and all I did is just pivot like that and pulled up, I mean guys, really really gently, and then it popped right out of there. So as you can see, there's nothing to grab onto at all. So but yeah, just a tip for you there. It looks like there's some grooves here, so maybe there's Ford probably has a special tool that'll go in and grab that. Probably something I could have made, but just be really really careful and you'll get those guys to come out of there. So and you can see this one's like the others, it's pretty darn nasty. So that water was just a kind of like a really thin lemonade when I started in there, and now it's kind of icky. So we'll give those injectors 30 minutes to get the bottom of them clean. I'm not talking in there because it's so noisy with that thing running, but you probably noticed I had the top covered. I just took a glove, cut the fingers out of a glove, pulled them over the top of the solenoid portion, taped it really good on the bottom, and then set up a couple sockets in the bottom of the ultrasonic cleaner to hold the basket up, and then had them just hang through the basket. That way I'm only cleaning just the bottom that goes down inside the combustion chamber. So we'll come back here in 30 minutes and see what they look like. Okay guys, so check this out. So here, I mean, look at, if I can get it to focus, there we go. Check out how clean that ultrasonic cleaner made these injectors. I mean, just amazing. So we're going to go ahead now and we're going to get these things installed. We're all set up now. We've got our new hardware. So we're ready to go to put this turbo on. Okay. We've got our shiny new heat shield with new gasket. Drop a blue Loctite on this bolt. This will get torqued to 8 foot-pounds, so we'll do 96 inch-pounds. Okay. And now we'll do the same thing here for cleaning this. I'm actually going to scrape that just a little bit. Alright, scrape that a little bit with a putty knife and then just ran a light file over it real gently. Got some of the remnants of that gasket off there, but you can see kind of how nasty that thing was. So, and we'll make sure that these oil lines, I don't want to put any brake clean on them, but we just want to make sure these O-rings are clean. And we'll just put a touch of dielectric grease. And I mean just a tiny bit, guys, so we can give those O-rings something to slide on so they don't roll out of their O-ring land and or get torn. Alright, let's set this thing on there. Kind of got to do 3 things at once here. There we go. Now we're started on those studs. We're in there, and we just got to get this other line to go there. Okay, and we'll run these in until they touch. These get a final torque of 35 foot-pounds. So we're going to do the same thing we did last time with the higher torque value. What we're going to do is we're going to go to 17. And then we'll go to 20. And then we'll go to 35. We'll do these in a crisscross as well. And now we'll go to final torque of 35. And the last thing we got to do, of course, I'm going to clean these bolts up off camera and get them installed. But we'll install those oil line bolts. Here and there, and then with that, those will get torqued to 8 foot-pounds or 96 inch-pounds as well. And then we'll come back to install the coolant line that's going to go from the back side of the water pump over here to the thermostat housing. Okay, we got our bolts put in, our oil lines down there, and our clamp up there, and torqued, and now we're ready to install this guy. I'm just going to put a little bit of coolant. I'll put a little bit of coolant around this O-ring, and then a little bit inside this hose, and that's going to make our life a heck of a lot easier when we go to put this thing on here. Alright, so we finally got it on there, guys. You basically have to, and it wouldn't matter if you took it out of there either, it'd be the same, but you basically have to point that hose back that way, and then it's going to try and kink. So if you go in and you squeeze it like that, it'll open it back up and then it'll slide back on there. So now we get a special tool here so we can get that clamp. Okay, that's got that. We'll get our 2 bolts on the back of the water pump here. I need to have a blue Loctite. And these we're going to torque to 79 inch-pounds. Okay, so now I'll I'll get you guys set up a little bit better, but about the only thing we have left to do now is we need to get our vacuum lines all installed on top of the motor. So I'll get the camera set up for that, and we'll come back and get it done. Okay, so we'll do just a quick walk around here. Kind of give you an idea how things are supposed to look with your long block buildup. The last thing we need to do is we've got to get the bolts for that flex plate. These are what they call a torque to yield bolt, and that means, for those of you that don't know, when you torque these down to spec, they stretch a little bit, and they're not designed to do that more than once. So appears that there's quite a few of these little motors being changed out because nobody has those, and I thought that was a little bit, originally I thought that was a little odd, and then I said, oh well, they're doing a lot of motor changes. So they are available from places that still have stock, but they're the larger dealerships, so they have to get shipped into my local dealership. But yeah, so that's what your motor should look like. Of course, like I said, minus the flex plate, and then first you'll have your core motor will be going back like this. Now, before I go put this back on the pallet and all that, of course, I'm gonna tape up all these openings and everything, keep debris and all that out of there, because I do not want to send this core back and have them say, oh well, hey, you know, debris got in there while it was being shipped on the truck, and so now you don't get your $800 core deposit back. So because that would not be a good thing. So, but I said this before, but pretty nice that this long block came with the oil cooler already on it. And the balancer, there's a very special and specific procedure for that, and it takes special tools. These balancers do not have a keyway in them. They're a tapered fit, actually kind of like what a lawnmower engine would be or something like that. But even those have a key, but these are a tapered, special tapered deal. So takes a special tool to hold it and get it torqued and all that. So, but so that's going to wrap it up for right now, and once we get those flex plate bolts and the spark plugs, we'll get the spark plugs in there, and then we'll swap positions with these motors. Actually, we won't even swap positions. We're going to take this one and set it back on the pallet and go ahead and get it out of here, and then this one will be going back down in the hole. So we'll get everything ready to go, and we'll bring it back when we're ready to do that.